Fear is not real. The only place that fear can exist is in our thoughts of the future. It is a product of our imagination, causing us to fear things that do not at present and may not ever exist. That is near insanity. Do not misunderstand. Danger is very real, but fear is a choice. We are all telling ourselves a story, and we choose the day that story changes. Will Smith. An excellent quote, and very prescient for the current time. I'm sure many of you have heard this story coming out of Florida where our governor has signed an order withholding state funds from schools who decide to go along with the unscientific mask mandates coming out of D.C. Now, some might say, Florida Maquis, wait a minute, I thought you were for local governance. I am. When local governance errs on the side of freedom, not on the side of tyranny. If there were localities that were allowing people to be more free than what perhaps the state would think should be the case, then that should be their choice, and then they can live with it. But what they're doing is they're trying to instill fear in children. That's what the masks have the ultimate effect of doing, is making kids afraid of their own shadow, of each other, of what might be around the next bend in the hallway. You see, that's wrong. And we're going to do everything we can to stop that. Now, in this article here from WFLA, they accidentally give up the game and they don't realize it. Let's scroll down to where they slip. Governor Ron DeSantis signed an executive order Friday that effectively bans school systems from establishing mask mandates in response to rising COVID-19 cases. In a press conference Friday, DeSantis said his order would have the Florida Departments of Education and Department of Health, Florida Departments of Education and Department of Health create rules that would keep mask wearing, up to a parent's decision. The order itself states the departments will now make the rules to keep COVID-19 protocols from violating constitutional freedoms, parents' rights to make health care decisions for their children, and protect children with disabilities from being harmed by mask mandates. Now, I'm sure many of you saw my video from last week. It was at a place called Two Meatballs in the Kitchen down in, I believe it's Cape Coral, Fort Myers, Southwest Florida, basically. But he talks about his reasons for doing this. Now, here's the pushback. This is where they give up the game. However, the Florida Education Association released a statement challenging DeSantis' decision, saying he should allow local authorities to make the decisions on masks. The FEA said DeSantis is not respecting the freedom of local officials to do what is best for their particular communities based on input from their constituents and COVID-19 data. Now, here is the quote. Ready for this? Whether it is mandating a pay plan that requires teachers with 15 years of experience to be paid the same as a first-year teacher, or telling locally elected officials they cannot enforce recommendations. How does one enforce a recommendation? From the American Academy of Pediatrics, Governor DeSantis, now here's where you really got to pay attention. Here's where they blow it. Governor DeSantis continues to think that Tallahassee knows best what all Floridians need, FEA President Andrew Spar said. Now, when you hear the word Tallahassee, scratch that out and read people of the state of Florida. Because that's what our House of Representatives and our Senate represents. And for those of you who would like to see it in numbers, this is the makeup of the Florida House of Representatives. We have nearly a 2-to-1 majority, just short of it. This is our Senate. We have what would be the equivalent of a supermajority, 24-16. We have a 60-40 hold. Now, this is the will of the people of the state of Florida. All of these are elected officials. You see, what the governor was talking about was the Parents' Bill of Rights in our state. Now, let's go back. Let's reread this again. Governor DeSantis continues to think that the people of the state of Florida know what's best for what all Floridians need. Yep. I agree. Governor DeSantis does continue to think that the people of the state of Florida know best what all Floridians need. Absolutely. Now here he continues. We reject that kind of thinking. Ding, 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 ding. They reject the kind of thinking that says the people of a state know what's best for themselves. And here's where it just shows how bonkers this guy is. Instead, we ask Governor DeSantis to allow all Florida's citizens, to have a voice. We do. They're called elections, Mr. Spar. They're called elections. We have them. And you lose most of the time. You see, if you would make decisions that were based in science that our health officials here agreed with, we would. See, this is decided in Florida. This is a decided thing in Florida. The only places where there are blue representatives, progressive representatives, are in what we refer to as New York South, Southeast Florida. And anybody who wants to verify what I said can go to Wiki Florida Senate, Wiki Florida House of Representatives. Now, to further prove this, even farther back in time, who remembers the song Seminole Wind by John Anderson? I'm sure a lot of you have heard it. Ever since the days of old, men have searched for wealth untold. They dig for silver and for gold, leave the empty holes. Well, there's a line in the song that says progress came and took its toll. More accurately read, progressives came and took their toll. And in the name of flood control, fear, they made their plans and they drained the land. Now the glades are going dry. What they're talking about is the Kissimmee River. You see, way back in the 60s, out of fear of flood control, they decided to dig this deep, long, wide channel and redirect the entire flow of the Kissimmee River into it, and it was devastating. It destroyed acres and acres and acres of wetland and did way more damage. Well, guess what? Kissimmee River reborn after decades and $1 billion for world's largest restoration of its kind. Let me read that again. World's largest restoration of its kind. Now, you would think Democrats would be lauding this. Democrats would be standing up saying, what a great success story. They're not. Because it was progressive Democrats that actually created the canal, and it was conservative Republicans that fixed it. That's why you're not hearing about this. One of the state's most notorious environmental atrocities, the deliberate destruction of the Kissimmee River midway between Central and South Florida, has been atoned for by one of the world's most ambitious triumphs in restoring nature, costing $1 billion, handling 40 million cubic yards of dirt, and requiring decades of planning, lobbying, legislation, and heavy equipment construction. The epic rebirth of the Kissimmee River is complete. Now, who put this nightmare into place back in the 60s? 1962 to 1971, U.S. Army Corps of Engineers, FedGov, at the behest of progressive Democrat governors, demanding flood protection, fear, straitjacketed the Kissimmee into a deep and wide canal 56 miles long. This was the entire basis of the song Seminole Wind. Drained 50,000 acres of wildlife-rich wetlands. And for those of you who think I'm making this up, C. Ferris Bryant, progressive Democrat governor. Leroy Collins, progressive Democrat governor, were the two primarily in charge of making this happen. Now, when did it get fixed? Starting in 1999, 40 miles of the original channel and 25,000 acres of wetlands have been restored. Well, let's go back to 99 and see what happened. Well, let's see. Who was governor then? The last Democrat governor we had in Florida, Buddy McKay, left office in 99. Jeb Bush, Charlie Crist before he lost his mind, Rick Scott, Ron DeSantis. So the restoration of this has taken place under conservative Republicans. The destruction took place under progressive Democrats. Fact. Speaking, by the way, of progressive Democrats, I would like to ask our single, lone, statewide elected Democrat a question. Ms. Freed, with respect, you say that you're on the side of farmers. You say that you're on the side of the people of the state of Florida. That's what you ran on. Well, it seems like there's only one kind of farmer that you're trying to protect. You see, because you're siding with the people, the progressive Democrats, that destroyed Central Florida when given their way. You said you would safeguard Florida's environment. Have you come out and acknowledged that this was a folly of the fear of progressive Democrats of old? Or is there one kind of specific farmer that you're married to, that you're pushing this agenda for, this drug agenda? Florida Ag Commissioner Nikki Freed engaged a medical marijuana company founder. Imagine that. Imagine that. And saying that she's protecting farmers. Perhaps you should look at some medical data about smokers and COVID and people that suck garbage into their lungs. Or maybe look at the statistics on obesity. 80% of the hospitalizations and death are in obese people. You see, getting high, smoking marijuana, that's just running from your fear. That's just changing your mental state so that you can escape the fear. That's all that drug is used for. People call it medical. It's just running from your fear, which brings me back to here. Fear is not real. You can't run from it. You can't hide from it. You got to face it. The only place that fear can exist is in our thoughts of the future. It's a product of our imagination, causing us to fear things that do not at present and may not ever exist. That is near insanity. Danger is very real, but fear is a choice. We are all telling ourselves a story, and we choose the day that story changes. Miss Freed, when are you going to start telling yourself a different story? When are you going to stop listening to DC and come on in for the big win on the winning team here in Florida? Why don't you stand with us instead of standing with them? I don't think you're a bad person. I just think you're highly misguided. There is danger, but we don't react with fear. And this story of restoring the Kissimmee is the perfect example of this not being just a recent issue. It goes back a long time, and it's a much bigger argument about how to fix the mistakes that were made in fear and restore things to the way that they should be. Wildlife has returned. It is absolutely a fantastic success story of courage over fear. And I'll leave it there. God bless, like, share, subscribe, and we will see you tonight on Twitch.